Thank you, everyone. Today's topic is called CRI, the second boom of container runtimes. So this topic is more about the container runtimes. And last year in Berlin, there is another session called Success of CRI, the bring hypervisor-based containers to Kubernetes. That's given by my colleague Harry. And this year, this topic is contributed by he and I. But today only I come here. And this time is just to follow the session last year, and it includes 3 parts. First one is about this a brief introduction about this CRI interface, and then we will have an overview of the current CRI implementations, how they call the container runtimes to launch the pod and the sandboxes, and then at the last we will go to see how the CRI to support our project, the Kata Contaienrs. So here is a brief history of the CRI interface, and that's a long story. It's more than 2 years ago, almost 3 years. There's a rocket from CoreOS have added into the kubelet as the second runtime engine. That's just follow the Docker. And at that time, there increased a worry about if people want to put more and more runtimes into the kubelet, and in kubelet the code will write twice, maybe 3 times or 4 times for different runtimes. And this is not a faked problem, because at that time hyper.sh is just joined the community and try to become the third runtime. Yes, that's us. And at that time we working on make the hyper runtime to be compatible with the semantics of the runtime works in the kubelet, and try to integrate it into the kubelet. Actually, we have done the patch, but at that time, more and more concerned about is this too complicated to add each runtime into the kubelet, and it's tight coupled with the kubelet code. So at that time, the issue was raised almost 3 years ago, and then there is a it's not a code, it's not the original words literally, and decide the Kubernetes should not vendor any of the runtime implementation, you know. And from that time the node team tried to move all the runtime-based code outside of Kubernetes. Instead, they make a generic runtime implementation, and then call all the runtimes identically with the interface. The interface will be called called as CRI Container Runtime Interface. At that time, the developers from Google, CoreOS, and HyperHQ, we drafted the Kubernetes runtime interface together, and the interface, the CRI, is written in gRPC. This occurred in 2015. You know, the gRPC is open source in the early 2015. So we just have the time to use the gRPC and test the difference between the gRPC interface and the HTTP REST interface. And it's obviously the gRPC have better responsibility, quick responsible, and it's high performance So this becomes the default, the interface for the CRI. And the first CRI implementation is the Docker shim, and then the first non-Docker CRI implementation is called Frakti. This is contributed by hyper.sh to the Kubernetes community. And just like Kubernetes is come from a Greek word, and the Frakti is called from another Greek word that's for the it's just in the ship. They use some isolation to keep the ship secure. And here is a brief introduction of the CRI interface. And the left part is about the kubelet itself. There is a sync loop of the kubelet of the pod lifecycle management, and then use the generic runtime to management the runtimes. Here is in the middle the CRI interface based on gRPC, and for the runtime part, it's mainly about the sandbox and the containers. Actually, it follows how the kubelet work with Docker before. They create the sandbox first and launch the containers one by one inside in the pod. When I say one by one, that's not means it's sequentially, but that means it's one call will create one container, but that's not in sequence. And the interface that describe the kubelet expect from the container runtimes, and it is extensible. So after the CRI become the default interface from the kubelet to the container runtime, we just need to maintain this interface, and you can implement your own container runtimes for the kubelet. Some is for the traditional containers, and others maybe for the virtual machines and such as the Kata Contaienrs. And to implement a CRI runtime, that looks not very difficult. When you use the kube control to run something, here is a pod full. There's two containers A and B inside it. First, it will run the pod sandbox to create the sandbox outside, and then create containers A and start A, and create container B and start B. And this in the bottom line, the container will be created and started. And when you want to remove it, you can stop it and remove the container from the pod. That's the life cycle of the containers. That it's imperative, and it's quite straightforward. And a more complicated issue is the streaming. You mean the standard I/O interface and the pod forwardings. And when you use kube control exec, you ask the API server to establish the stream to the containers, and then it asks the kubelet, and the kubelet use the CRI to call the CRI shim, the CRI implementation, and it will create a stream server, and the stream server will set up a server just for the stream and stream it to the API server. So in this way, the stream will not pass through the kubelet to the API server. It's just direct from the API server to the CRI shim to the runtimes. So it's a bit it's improved the performance and reduce the workload of the kubelet. And so that's the brief introduction of the CRI itself. And now we will see the existing CRI runtimes, CRI-O, CRI Containerd, Frakti, and we'll introduce how they work. And the existing CRI runtimes include the CRI Containerd, and now the CRI Containerd it become a plugin of the Containerd, and will not run as a separate process. And CRI-O, that's from Red Hat and other companies in the community, and the last we'll introduce the Frakti. I will introduce how they implement the CRI and what's the difference. And firstly, it will be the Containerd with the CRI plugin. Actually, the gray part is the original standalone CRI Containerd, how it works. The kubelet will use the CRI called the CRI service, the CRI plugin inside Containerd, and then the Containerd will call the other service inside the Containerd. And it includes the runtime service that will run the runtimes, and the storage service called a snapshot, and the diff plugins, and storage the metadata in the images and the containers plugins. So the Containerd itself is highly dependent on the plugin mechanism. And we just want to focus on the runtime part. The runtime will call by default. They will call runC to create the both the pod sandbox and the container inside the sandbox, and set up the input-output stream to with the shim to the containers, and use the shim as the delegate of the container, and that's what the Containerd do. And before the CRI plugin, CRI become a plugin, they use the standalone process. The process will use the gRPC interface called the service of the Containerd. That's pretty similar. And also, I will introduce how CRI-O implement this. So you can see they're very similar, right? And yes, they also provide when the CRI interface was defined, the community tried to implement a daemon that only use the runC to create containers, and they don't need to depend on the Docker daemons. And the CRI service will call the runtime parts and the image and rootfs storages to create rootfs for the containers, and to launch the container sandbox and pod sandbox and the containers. So that's quite similar because they both for the same job. So that's reasonable. That quite similar. And Frakti is a bit different, So the Frakti itself, at the beginning, that's for the runV, that's different from runC to create the virtualization-based containers. And first, the Frakti is the first non-Docker runtime CRI runtime implementations. So it's called the hyper-D with gRPC to create the runV containers, and for some privileged containers they use it just use the Docker shim, and for the hyper-D part it used the runV as a library. The different things is they don't use some a tool like the runtime through the command line. Instead, just call it from the library interface. So there is no shims for each process, and so this is the most different part. And then use the use the different parts. They used for the runV containers. It used the Hyper-D, and for the Docker-based container for the privileged part, it used the Docker shim, and also the last year's Summer of Code project we have a unikernel support in the Frakti. That's quite similar. That shows use the CRI interface. You can not only support the traditional containers, you can also work with the something like unikernels. So let's go to the main part, and we will introduce the CRI and the Kata containers. Last year in Austin, the KubeCon, we announced the Kata Contaienrs project. The Kata Contaienrs project contributes from the Intel Clear Containers and HyperRunV. Both the projects are worked on the virtualization-based container runtime and try to provide a container with the VM levels isolation. And the two projects merged into the Kata containers, and we worked in the past months and try to release the 1.0 in this month, I think. And the vision of the Kata containers, we want to make it become a light and fast VM-based containers. You know, the container itself it means lightweight, but the VM you always think that's heavy, that's not light. But we in the Kata containers project we try to make it light as a it's light as a container, but it could be secure or could be isolated as a VM. And the Kata containers, based on the Intel Clear containers and the HyperRunV technologies, both of the runtime have all it began from 2015, and they are developed more than 2 years before the Kata containers project. So both the projects have some working scenarios in the production. So we could make it fast into the Kata containers, and we will try to support existing user projects, and we will seamless integration with the Kubernetes via CRI Interface and with Docker and the other OpenStack projects. And also the Kata containers will support multiple architectures, not only Intel architecture, but also ARM and Power and so on. And we will support multiple hypervisors, not only the KVMs, but also the Zhang and something else. And this slide is about how the Kata works. Actually, in Kata containers, each pod is isolated by the hypervisor. You know, here there is a Linux kernel inside the pod. So there is two level of isolation. And by this we can, if there is exploit in the application A, and there is something get the privilege inside the sandbox A, the application A that couldn't affect the host and other containers, and also because we used the watch. We just configure down the virtual machine and use a tiny Linux kernel inside it, and it is not a full distribution inside the pod. So it could be set up very fast. We make it as fast as container, and in the previous test with some acceleration technology for the virtualization and layer and the kernel part, we could launch a container in about 100 milliseconds. So so we could call it secure as container, but fast as secure as VM, but fast as container. And the Kata will seamless integration with the existing container ecosystem because we support the OCI specs, and we try to implement the runC compatible command lines, and also we have a runtime library that's identical with the CRI semantics, and this make it could work with the Dockers and also the Kubernetes. When we want to implement the CRI interface for Kata containers, we have two different integration methods. The first one is Kata Contaienrs as a standalone tool. That means you can just call Kata Runtime like you call the runC command line. And it will use a runC compatible command line interface and just pass the OCI specs to it. And by this way, it could work with the containerd and the CRI-O. And the other way is we use it as a runtime lib. As a library, that's just like what runV works before. The runV itself provide a command line interface, but at the same time, it provides some additional APIs that make it could be more efficiently work with the CRI shim like the Frakti. And in the future, we may implement a containerd plugin that's based on the Kata Contaienrs runtime that you don't need to call it from the command line. And now I will introduce the different implementation method. And the first one is about with the containerd or CRI-O. And these two are quite similar, the containerd and the CRI-O, as I introduced in the previous slides. And the runtime part will, before the runtime work, the storage part will create the container root FS and use the file system sharing to give the root FS to the sandbox and leave the work to the agent. And on the other side, the runtime it will call the command line to first. It will create the pod sandbox. For the pod sandbox, they don't need a image actually. Just launch the VM and with the Kata agent inside and a kernel inside, and the Kata agent will communication with outside. The runtime will launch the container with through the interface to the Kata agent with the translated OCI spec to create the containers inside. For the communication, there are two ways to communicate from the outside to the Kata agent. The agent is in the VM, or say in the pod sandbox, and here we have two ways to communicate: word serial or the VSOC. And the word serial is about a software simulated serial part. And it's because it's a serial part. It's not a socket. So we need a proxy to do the multiplex to support the multiple connection from the runtime and the shim go to the send command to the agent inside. And if if the host kernel or the hypervisor support VSOC, the VSOC is contributed by the VMware, and it supports, I think, it supported by since 3. Not quite sure, 3.15 or 3.18 kernel that support the VSOC, maybe 4, maybe 4.0. Then with the VSOC, we can just directly ask the Kata containers without the proxy. So the Kata container itself, Kata agent itself will become a gRPC server, and the runtime could the shim and the Kata command line will connect to the VSOC to send the command to the Kata agent. And here all the designs to just from the connection is established from outside to inside. There's no reverse connection. That means the agent can't initiate a connection to the outside. So this guarantee the security. And the other way, by the Frakti way, we use the Kata as a library, so it will be integrated in the Frakti process, and the streams, include streams, will be implemented inside the Frakti process. So there won't be a shim here. They can just call the Kata agent through the word serial or VSOC. Even we need a multiplex, we can do it in the Kata lib. So that's the new progress in the Kata projects, and because we can just call the runtime lib and call the sandbox directly. So not only with the file system sharing, we can also use the block device or the network storage for the container root FS and other volumes. That make it flexible. And at the end, we also pass the translated OCI spec into the VM to create the containers inside the VMs. And for the comparison, that's for the CRI-O and the container implementations, we could share more code paths, but for the Fraktis, we can save some shims and the proxy process because we don't need more one container, one shim process, and one sandbox, one proxy, and for the resources, the root FS and we'll have more choice, and we can add our own networking plugins for it. That's the comparison. So for the next of the Frakti, the next of the Frakti that will be first we will try to make the part of becomes the plugin for the container D. You know, we just try to avoid to split the community to different parts. We want to share more parts with other projects, and we don't need too many implementations for the same things. So we will try to make the Kata part, the Kata containers part, and related storage parts to become the plugin for the container D, and also our other supports that could like the current project, current Frakti, it could call the Kata container Kata agent directly without talk to the too many shims and proxies to save the additional process and additional memories. And also we will we will by the release of the Kata container 1.0, we could have the integration with the Kata runtime lib, and also we will improve the other runtimes, and that's about the next part of the Frakti. And for the release in this KubeCon, we have many related sessions first about the Kata containers. There will be about except this one, there will be 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions from different members of the Kata containers community. They will introduce all of the different parts for the different attended audience levels, and also for the container security, it become a more and more hot topic for the Kubernetes community. We'd like to see this one, and tomorrow will be a topic from Google, and they will introduce some very interesting implementation of their container security methods. And I think, yeah, that will be a complementary part for the Kata containers, and that's all. And do you have any questions? Please.
Thank you. Earlier, you showed an example with 3 Kata containers, and each Kata containers contains an app, some middlewares, and a Linux kernel. Sorry? You show an example with 3 Kata containers, yeah. And inside each containers, there were an application, some middlewares, and a Linux kernel. Is it possible to trick this usage and just embed an application and use the kernel from the host? Yes. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to trick the usage and just use the hardware, the host Linux kernel?
We have a Linux kernel inside each sandbox. That because for the isolation, you know, if we just only use one Linux kernel outside, that's like what the runC do. Yes, it will save some resources, but at the same time, and if there is some attack inside one container, that if it break its kernel, that means it get the whole control of the host. Yeah.
Thank you. And you showed us that we can isolate VMs with Kata container with new Linux kernels. Maybe my question is that how we migrate some Legion's Linux kernel into Kata containers. Is this in the scope or the roadmap of Kata container?
You mean the existing kernel in your?
Maybe you know I used runV recently, but I found that the guest OS kernel is 4.12 hyper. Yeah. It's much newer than the Legion-C Linux kernels. So I'm wondering if there is any way for us to migrate Legion-C Linux kernel like 2.6.33, 32.
Yeah, yes, that's possible. I think the Kata containers itself depends on very few modern Linux features actually in the guest, I think. So for the guest, if you don't want the optimization for something like vSock or something else, you can just with a older Linux kernel and with some options such as to be the VM guest and something like inside enabled, that will be work. But I think that we need some tuning for it. In the Kata Contaienrs project, there is a opening PR for the kernel configurations. So you can reference the configuration to see what is the essential part for the essential kernel configuration for the guest kernels.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
We are actually over time. We can do one last question.
So what is the networking story for VM containers? Is it CNI or something else?
Yeah. The network part isn't addressed in this topic. Actually, there's two ways for this ways. We call it with the runC compatible command lines. So this means the outside the kubelet will have already created the net NS for it, and the CNI plugins will plug the network to the namespaces. So we need to get the configuration from the net NS, and maybe set up a bridge to set up from the NS to the VMs, but that's will waste some cycles and reduce the throughput for the networking. And also, if we could have our own CNI plugins, with the plugin we could just skip the namespace from the outside bridge and the VM. We can set up a direct connections. That's by that way you can have better performance, but you need to have your own CNI plugins. And that's what we do in our public service.
Cool. I'm actually a CNI maintainer, so let's talk after.
Yeah. Thank you.